Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to another GameMaker tutorial. And this is part 2 to the one-dimensional arrays tutorial that I'm using that references to my GameMaker language book. And if you want to check that out, I'll put a link right here. If you've already checked it out, don't worry about the link. I really appreciate you guys' support, regardless of whether or not you pledge to the Kickstarter. Just watching my videos and helping me out here is awesome. It does so much for me, and it helps motivate me to continue doing this kind of thing, which this is my passion. So it's a lot of fun for me. So what we're going to go over in this tutorial, like I promised in the last video, we're going to make this inventory so it can stack. And we're also going to talk about how you can use a loop to loop through an array. Because if you don't know how to loop through all of the different elements of an array, then arrays are almost, well, they're not useless, but they're kind of useless. It's so much more powerful if you know how to loop through them. So that's what we're going to go over first. So let's come into the object player and come into the create event. And notice how we're writing this kind of same thing over and over and over again, with just the only thing that's changing is the number in here, right? Everything else is exactly the same. So this would be a great spot to use a loop to initialize this array. And we're going to use a for loop because for loops are commonly used in arrays, and because they're convenient, you can kind of set them all up at once. And there's 3 parts to a for loop, and I'll show you what those parts are. But let's start out. The first thing you do for a for loop is just write out the word for. Then you do parentheses, curly bracket, and a closing curly bracket. So it's pretty simple. Now the first part of the for loop is the initialization. That word didn't want to come out right. This is where we create a variable that we're going to add to that will step through the array, because you can see every time we create a new one of these, it's got 1 added to the value, right? 0, 1, 2. So we're adding 1 every time. So we're going to create a variable that we can use to do that. And a lot of people will use an identifier, just I, for the variable name. So like var I. But we're going to do index because it's easier to read, and it'll just be better while I'm teaching you guys to use index. But just know that it's pretty common for people to use I, and so if you see that, you'll know that it's kind of used for index. So this is the first part of the array, and you can see there's a semicolon there, which is a little weird. Sorry, the first part of the loop. So the next part is the check. So this is where we check to see if we've, because you don't want to loop for forever, right? So this is the stop, to stop you from looping for forever. And we're going to do index is less than or equal to 2. Now this is the part that people get confused a lot on, because we have 3 elements here, right? Even though it only goes up to 2, there's 3 elements here. And so we're actually going to use less than or equal to 2. You could do less than 3 as well, but I'm going to do less than or equal to 2. And then the last part is where you increment it. And so we're just going to index. You can either use plus equals 1, which just means add 1 to index, or you can do plus plus, which is the shorthand for plus equals 1. And so here's how the for loop is going to work. In the very first time, it's going to set index equal to 0, right? And it's going to check. It's going to say, is index less than or equal to 2? Well, index right now is 0, so yes, it is less than or equal to 2. So it's going to jump down here, and it's going to execute this code, whatever we put here. So for now, I'm just going to put code. It's going to execute this code. Then what it's going to do is it's going to add 1 to index. Okay? Then it's come back around in a loop, and it's going to say, well, now index is equal to 1, right? It's not equal to 0 anymore. And it's going to say, oh, index is still less than or equal to 2. So run this code again. So this is the second time we've run the code. Then it's going to add 1 to index, and index is going to equal 2 now. And it's going to come around and it's going to say, is index less than or equal to 2? Well, yes, because 2 equals 2, so it is equal. And so it's going to run the code again, and that's going to run the code the third time. And then it's going to add 1 to index, and then it's going to come around and it's going to say, is index less than or equal to 2? And index is going to be 3 at this point, so no, it's not. So then it's going to jump out of the code and continue down and do whatever is down here, right? And it'll be done with the loop. So here's the beautiful thing about for loops is that we can put all of this right here into one line of code in here. So we'll do inventory index equals -1. So how does this work? Well, the first time it goes through this loop, index is equal to 0. So inventory 0 equals -1. That's this line right here. The second time, index is equal to 1. Inventory 1 equals -1. That's this line right here. And the third time, it's equal to 2. Inventory 2 equals -1. That's this line right here. And we just put all 3 of these lines into 3 more lines right here. Really efficient, right? But if you had a larger example where, let's say your inventory has, 100 slots in it, this would still only be 3 lines of code. You would just do less than or equal to 99. And it would do 100 slots for you. So that's the benefit of using a for loop. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to leave this for loop like this. And I usually like to put parentheses there and here, or spaces, it helps me to read it easier. Okay. Oh, that's the movement for the player in the step event. Let's look at our draw event. So this is another great spot to do a for loop. And we're going to do the exact same thing, and I'm not going to explain it in quite as much detail. Var index equals 0. Index is less than or equal to 2. Index plus plus. Parentheses, curly brackets, and then we're just going to have this draw text 1 time instead of 3 times, and we're going to do draw text 32 times parentheses index plus 1. So if we're on the first pass, index is going to equal 0. We're going to add 1 to it and times that by 32. Which is going to be 32, right? 1 times 32 is 32. That's this line. The second pass, index is going to equal 1. We're going to add 1 to it. That's going to be 2. 2 times 32 is 64. That's this line. The third time through, index is going to equal 2. We're going to add 1 to it. That's 3. 3 times 32 is 3 times 32. That's that line right there. And then we'll just want to make sure that we're drawing string inventory, and instead of 0, index, because we want to draw the appropriate slot in our inventory. So once again, for loop, very, very useful for shortening some of this code up, and it's basically mandatory if you get into larger amounts of arrays, which you will. Now let's look at another place where the for loop is going to be useful, and that is right here. Because look, we're doing the same thing again. Same thing. We're writing the same code 3 times in a row. So we're going to do another for loop. For index, let's see, var index equals 0. Index is less than or equal to 2. Index plus plus. Okay. And then we're going to put one of these this if statement in here. And let me drag this down a little bit. If inventory index is equal to -1, inventory index equals other.id with other instance destroy. And we can cut out this line here. And that shortened it up quite a bit. If you need to pause, you can. Just realize that this is just stepping through each part of the array. So 0, 1, and 2, checking to see if they're empty. And if they're not empty, it's putting the item there and destroying the other item. So now that we've changed all of our code, let's go make sure it still works, because we changed a lot of code all at once. So we're going to want to make sure it works. And that's a good thing to get in the habit of doing, is checking your code every time you change it. So you can see that one put that item in both of those slots. Oh, we didn't change. Let's see, which one did we change? Did we change the red one or the blue one? We changed the blue one. Which one did I grab first? I grabbed the blue one second. So the blue one's messed up. So this code right here doesn't work, and here's why. It's because it continues to step through the array and put the item in the different places. So once we've hit this spot right here, we want to exit out of this loop, and the way to do that is a break. So once we've found a slot and we've put the item in the slot, we don't want to continue doing this loop anymore. We want to break out of it, and so that's a crucial thing that I forgot. This breaks out of the loop. So let's say 0, index 0, or array 0, the first slot is empty. Well, we put the item in there, and we don't want to go through and put the item in all the other slots. We just want to exit out. So that's what this line does. It breaks out of it. Let's make sure that works. Yeah, I can't believe I forgot the break. Oh well, that's what testing is for, right? So let's come over and get this blue one. Hopefully it only puts it in one slot. There we go, one again, and we get the red one. There we go. But it's not stacking, right? So let's figure out how we can make it. Okay, let's see. First thing we need to do, well, let me think. The first thing we need to do is we need to create a new array. And this is going to be inventory number. And the way we're going to create it is we can create it. We can use the same for loop right here to create this array as well. So we'll just do inventory index. Well, let's see, inventory underscore number index equals 0. So what this is called, well, I don't know the technical term for it. I think it's called a parallel array. So these are parallel arrays. And what that means is the 0, the first element of this array correlates to the first element of this array. So we can keep track. They're kind of the same because index is going to be the same for each one. And we can keep track of the number of items inside of this array using parallel arrays. And I'd really like to draw this out for you. but I'll just show you in the game. So let's come into the draw event, and alongside this right here, we're going to have a new one that is, let's see, we'll do 2 times that minus 8 and plus 8. So add 8 to 32, minus 8 here. I'm trying to think, we might want to minus 16. Let's add 16. Add 16 and add 8. Subtract 8. Yeah, let's subtract 8. There we go. Now, instead of doing string inventory index, we're going to do string underscore number, inventory underscore number index. So this is going to be the number of items that is in each of these corresponding array slots. So they're the same, right? The item inventory number 0 has the number of items that is in inventory 0. So we can keep track that way using parallel arrays. So come into our, well, first thing we want to do is let's delete the red items event for now. Come into the blue one. When we put an inventory item in a slot, we're going to want to add to the number of items that are in that slot. So we're also going to do inventory underscore number and then do index plus equals, well, we can just do plus plus, right? So now if we have an empty slot and we put an item in there, then we're going to add and say, oh, there's one item in there now. So at the location that we're at the inventory box that we're at, we're going to add 1 to the value of that, and there'll be one item in there. And we're drawing it on the screen, so we should see that. Hopefully, it might be kind of a little bit, the text might draw kind of on top of the other text a little bit for this example. I don't know how well it'll work. Okay, so you can see there's 0 items in each of those slots. If I go over here, grab that item, there's now 1 item in that slot. If I come over here and grab, well, the red item, we deleted that collision event. If I grab the blue item, there's now 1 item in that slot too. It still doesn't stack them, but it's keeping track of how many items are in there now. So the only thing we need to do to make sure it stacks is we need to check to see if the 2 items are of the same instance, basically, are of the same parent object. So I think we can do that. Let me check something real quick. This is something I do a lot. Use the help file. So instance underscore let's do object underscore get name, object underscore get name. That's what we want. And this is the object. I think we can use our instance ID for that. No, we have to use object index. So we would use the instance ID and then object index. So in our comparison here, we're going to do if it's empty or or parentheses are equal to, let's see, we're going to do other dot, let's see, object get name other, and this has parentheses, other dot object index. And then for the first part, let me maximize this. We're going to do this is the tricky part. Object get name. It's not too tricky actually. I don't except I don't know we can reference it this way. Inventory index dot object index. Oh. Object get name. I'm missing a parenthesis. Yeah, I'm missing one right here. Okay, well, let's hope that works. Let's try it out and see. So basically what that does is it checks to see if they're the same object. And if they are, then it lets it put it there. Hopefully that's what it does. Aha. So yeah, I can't do it that way. Here's how I think I can do it though. So before, we've been storing the ID of the other object. Let's do the object index, not the ID. Basically that's just going to be the type of object that it is instead of the ID. We don't necessarily need the ID for the other object in this case. So we're going to switch it to the object index. And this is going to be way cleaner. This code now. We're just going to do inventory index equals other dot object index. So we're just comparing them. Are these two objects the same? Is the object in our inventory the same as the object type that we just picked up? If they are, we also want to put it in there. So hopefully that works. Sometimes this is just how it is when you're working on your game and working on your project. You need to check some sort of a reference, make sure what you're doing makes sense, and then test stuff out. So yeah, you can see I have object index is number 1, and there's 2 of them in there. So that inventory now stacks. If we were to put multiple blue items in here, like that, then you'll see if we go over those blue items over and over and over again, we can collect those items and our inventory will stack. So in our inventory, we've got a blue item here. The 1 here represents the type of object that it is. And we've got 8 of them. And if we come grab this red one, we can't grab the red one. So, I'm curious actually. I'll have to test something after this video, but I'm going to duplicate this event and do a collision with the red item as well so that they're the same, and throw a few more red ones in here. The red items should be the number 2. That's probably the object index for the red item because it's the third item we've created, and the first one would be 0, second would be 1, third would be 2. So let's see. Yeah. So we've got 4 number 2 items, and when we collect these, we've got 8 of the second item that we created. So this is the third object we created. This is the second. And we've got a stacking inventory. Now in the next tutorial, I don't really have time in this one, but in the next tutorial on this, I'll show you guys how to draw the sprite here in this slot instead of just drawing the number that represents the object. But technically using this way, you can now recreate that object because you've got the object index. So you can recreate that object in the room and then subtract from there. So you can get items out of your inventory, and that would work that way. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate your patience with me changing up the code a little bit in here and getting it figured out so that we could stack the inventory. A lot of people get confused with stacking inventory. Basically, you just check if it's empty or if the objects are the same, right? And then throw it in the inventory box there. I hope you learned something in this video. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure and like, favorite, share it. I'll put a quick link right here again to my Kickstarter video. If you still haven't checked that out, please at least just go watch the video. You don't have to pledge, but go watch the video, and maybe you could share it on Facebook or whatever. That would help me out a ton. So I will talk to you guys later.